and welcome to another week on my allotment. And my emphasis this week has very firmly been in the greenhouse. The weather's got sufficiently warm now, and I don't think the nights are too cold, and I'm really getting stuck into the seeds. I'm sure everybody with an allotment or a kitchen garden is the same. That really is, you know, if you'd had a set of scales where the work lies, the work really lies with the greenhouse. And I'm moving now this week towards the squashes, the cucumbers, the butternuts, pumpkins, maybe leave the pumpkins a little bit longer. But yeah, so in a minute when I finished here, when I finish talking to you, I'll show you a clip of the greenhouse. And I'm very pleased with the way it's all going. I've said to you before, it's only a 6x6 greenhouse, so it really is like a Rubik cube. You move something there, something moves here, and so on and so forth. And I've moved my first batch of broad beans into the cold frame behind the shed, simply to create more room back home in the greenhouse. So yeah, things are going well there. And up here, the work has continued on the paths. Interestingly, most of my work is on the paths and the hard landscaping. The borders are pretty much there now, apart from the fact that we're waiting for the manure, and that doesn't seem like it's happening anytime soon. And you can forgive the farmer because, you know, with months and months of not being able to get on the ground, now everything's sort of dried up. The farming machinery around us is working frantically. So I'm afraid we obviously take we are last priority. So we're going to have to wait a bit, I think, for that. And you know, one day I'll drive up here and it'll be there. So we'll just have to wait. What I'm concerned about though is that I wait and wait, and eventually I can't wait any longer. I've got to get things in the ground, and then sod's law is that as I'm putting stuff in and I've not raised the beds, along will come the manure. But so be it. That's the state of play with that at the moment. Interestingly, my life is, apart from not going away in the caravan and not going out to lunch and things like that, my life's pretty much unchanged by this current situation. I'm working okay, and I come up the allotment when I'm not working, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. And of course, there is a positive in all this for me, selfishly, and that's the traffic. There's no traffic. I can go to work 5 minutes before I need to be where I'm going instead of 45 minutes before. So, you know, from my own perspective, things are okay. However, in my last video, I showed you a little clip of me at work on the Bigsborough estate on the River Wye. Beautiful place to work. And I went, since I've made my last video, I went there this Wednesday and I got laid off. I should have seen it coming, really. I mean, the riverbanks are maintained by me for the fishermen to gain access to the river. And of course there's no fishing taking place. And he's now made a decision to give everybody's fees back. It's his main source of income. So he's given the money back to the fishermen. And so he doesn't need the riverbanks maintained, and with no income from that, he's told me that I can restart once everything goes back to normal, which may be in a couple of weeks, it may be in a couple of months, who knows. So yeah, a bit of a coincidence that I show you what I do on a Wednesday and now I don't do it. However, the next day, I went to the garden centre to do a bit of work, and the manager of the place approached me and said, "We are desperate for delivery drivers. Would you have any spare time to give us with your van to deliver goods that people have ordered online?" I said, "Well, funny you should mention that. How about a Wednesday?" Perfect. So I was unemployed on a Wednesday for less than 24 hours. Life always works out. So that was a good bit of news. Talking of being laid off, I'd like to give you another little bit of niff, naff and trivia. Have you ever wondered where the phrases "to be fired" and "to be sacked" come from? Well, let me tell you. Back in, I suppose, it must have been a few hundred years ago, tradesmen would travel around the country with their tools looking for work. And most tradesmen were simple folk, albeit skilled, and they carried their tools in a sack. And when you found work, you used your own tools and you got stuck in, and when the work dried up, in other words, you were perfectly competent and they were very happy with you, but the work finished, the employer would give you your sack back, you put your tools in it and you moved on. So to be given the sack, that's where that term comes from. However, if you were not a competent tradesman, or you were unreliable, or you were dishonest for whatever reason, and the employer thought that you shouldn't be allowed to move on and become a nuisance to somebody else, he would take your tools off you and he would put them in the blacksmith's fire, and your tools would be fired and ruined. And that's where the phrase "to be fired" comes from. So I've never really considered it before, but there's a significant difference between being given the sack and being fired. You may or may not find that interesting. I do. I hope you do too. And one other thing before we go and have a look at my greenhouse, with all this nonsense that's going on at the moment, you know, my customers, obviously they want to talk about it, as I'm happy to, and a few people have asked me what I think of the government's response, and I'm not going to discuss that now, but I think there's two kinds of people in life, isn't there? There's those that get on with something and are responsible, and there's those that stand back and comment on it. There's those that do, and there's those that watch. And it's easy to be the person who watches and comments. It's not so hard, not so easy to be the person doing. And that's my only comment on it, is that I'm sure our current leader, Boris Johnson, is trying to do his best. And, you know, the Health Secretary and all the rest of them. I may or may not agree with them, and you may or may not, but he is undoubtedly doing his best. He looks exhausted. And that leads me on to something else that I saw a poem once that thoroughly interested me, and it's called The Gladiator, and I'm going to share it with you in a minute. It's always struck me that from everything from a karaoke bar to conflict, you know, there are those that go into a karaoke bar and the microphone is given to them and they jump up on stage and give it their best. Sometimes it's bloody awful. And then there's those who will be petrified of it and stand back and sit in the corners and watch. And are quite happy to watch people make complete fools of themselves. And then there are other more serious situations where there's those that jump forward, run into trouble, and there's those that stand back and go, "Ooh, wouldn't do that." I always remember army boxing, watching army boxing, which was a big event. You were never allowed to boo, and there's a good reason for that. I mean, boxing used to be a noble art, and the modern day boxers have rather devalued it, and a lot of them are not nice people. Boxing used to be noble, and it was done on the whole by gentlemen. Not always, but in the army it's still a noble art, and you were never allowed to boo. And there's a good reason for that, because it takes incredible physical and moral courage to get in the ring. And those of us who are sat there watching should admire it for what it was. And so you only ever clapped. And I thought that was a good thing. And so I'm going to share this poem with you now, and it's about that same subject. The Gladiator. It is not the critic who counts, nor the one who points out how the strong man stumbled, or how the doer of deeds might have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, who strives valiantly, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who, if he wins, knows the triumph of high achievement, and who, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who knew neither victory nor defeat. I think that's profound, and the more you think about it, the more profound it gets. Anyway, that's enough culture. Let's go and have a look in the greenhouse. Well, this is what's going up the allotment tomorrow. Quick tour of the greenhouse. Unbelievably, I have trouble growing radish, because the ground both in my garden and at the allotment are so infested with slugs. They're very heavy clay soils and the slugs are everywhere, that I can grow them fine, but they get eaten. So this time what I've decided, I'm growing a French breakfast, which is a long thin one, and I've just sown one row of that cell tray there, and when they appear I'm going to grow another row and then another and so on, and see that because a radish is only small, they should grow fully in those cells. We'll see, I'll let you know. So anyway, a selection of brassicas, sweet peas, cosmos, a Sarah Raven variety called Bright Light, autumn giant leeks, the Musselburgh leeks there, coming down to more sweet peas. I'm growing some New Zealand spinach, never grown that before, but I've never managed to grow spinach, the normal type, because it just bolts. The long thin cells there are the sweet corn, and then I've sown a different leek today in there. That's a blue soleil. Peas, jaguar in that gutter there, and then I've got some kale, some spring onions, lettuce, don't know what that bottom one is, and then the alderman peas in this gutter set up here. And then today I've put 6 Shirley tomato plants that were grown from seed in position. A little bit early maybe, but I've got 6 in the conservatory in reserve if I've gone too early. And then these are my first early swift potatoes. That one was done on the 7th of February on its own. And today out there I've sown shallots. So there's not a lot in the way of plants up the up the allotment, but here in the greenhouse, as I'm sure in greenhouses all over the country, especially with the situation at the moment where we're supposed to be stuck indoors, there's lots of this going on. I can't be alone, I'm sure. Anyway, back to the allotment. Just gone 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and I got here in darkness and it was deathly quiet, and I'm watching the sunrise, which is absolutely stunning, and all of a sudden the farm machinery starts up. There's a hint of daylight and the farmers are already setting to. But before I do anything on this, what is set to be a beautiful day, it's a cup of tea, courtesy of the Kelly kettle. When you can't buy gas and it's too bloody hell, and it's too warm for a stove in the shed, thank God for this flamethrower. I'm sure it won't be long till that water's boiling. Tea's up. Cheers. And so the day begins. Well, it's Sunday morning and I got here nice and early, made my cup of tea, still drinking it, and even with life as strange as it is now, personally I'm still busy. I don't sit indoors, can't do that, so even when I'm at home I'm usually to be found out in the garden doing something. Always lots to do. I mean, at the end of all this we should all end up with very neat and tidy gardens, very highly polished cars and very clean carpets, but I'm not sure that'll all be the case. But so why do I get up here so early? You know, it irritates my wife because inevitably I wake her up when my alarm went off this morning at 5 o'clock. And you know, I apologise to her, but she'll go back off to sleep and she'll get another good few hours kip. But for me, this time of the morning is just special. There's nobody else about. There's a bit of road traffic noise inevitably, but this is an allotment, not a wilderness, so you've got to expect a bit of background noise, and it's that. I come here for that. I sit in my chair and I just take the time to do nothing. You know, it's 6:30 something now. That's 6:33, which is about the official sunrise at this time of the year. No sign of the sun yet, but yeah, I just come up here to do nothing. Drink my cup of tea. I've had a wander around the plot. I have established my plan for the day, which will inevitably change. It's just a moment for me. You know, we've got our daughter with us at the moment, and that's nice. Last year we had my two boys living with us at different stages because of things going on in their personal lives, and you know, they only stayed for a couple of months and then they went back to doing what they do. And now, because of this situation, my daughter's in the RAF and the RAF police are working from home at the moment. Good time to be a criminal. Top tip. So she's with us for who knows how long, and that's nice. But as parents will know, girls of any age can be quite demanding of your time and effort. So I get to come up here and it's where it's me time. So that's why I'm up here at this ridiculous hour, looking at this stunning view and doing absolutely sweet Fanny Adams. And the thing is, when was the last time you stopped and just listened to birdsong? It's truly one of the beautiful things of nature. It's coming. I can see the intense glow getting more intense. It's going to peep over the top of the farm shop business centre any moment now. Well, this is a big deal for me. 5th of April, and apart from onions and garlic, which, you know, are very hardy crops, this is the first thing I've raised from seed this year that's going in the ground. So I'm really, really excited about this. It marks a big moment. So these have got to go in. So from this to that. There, that didn't take long, did it? Well, next on the list are the 2 strawberry beds, and they've suffered a bit, I think, from sitting in the wet ground all winter. And I've just been looking at the raspberry bed, and I think my raspberries are all but finished. I think that bed was particularly wet over the winter, and I think they've sat with their roots in water, and I think it's done for them. So that would be a crying shame, because we really love our raspberries. But these strawberry beds are my concern right now, and the membrane's got to come up, got to prune or cut back all the dead growth, or as much of it as I can. Give the plants a bit of a dressing of blood, fish and bone, and then weed it all and put it all back down and tidy it up. That's going to take me most of the day, I'm guessing, but that's what I'm doing now. Well, didn't take as long as I thought, and I was really surprised pleasantly how wet, damp the soil is under that membrane, when the rest of the ground really has hardened up very, very quickly. That membrane really does keep that ground damp under there. So they've been cut back a bit. A couple of them came off with the sheet and they were rotten. But I also had a couple of runners that had rooted around the edge, so I've dug those out and put them back in the holes. So all in all, very successful. Ready for the summer. Even if there's no Wimbledon, there will be strawberries. Well, let's have a quick look at the plot. And down here, all these chippings that I laid so thickly back in the autumn, I'm now scraping off to try and fill in the paths. Now onto the main plot itself. Quite a few onions in down here, and the garlic, and those tubs I've got there, I've got some old flower seeds, antirrhinums and Californian poppies and a few other bits and pieces. So I've put them in there, put the glass over, and if they work, they work. If they don't, so be it. But I'm really concerned about the raspberry bed. There should be more growth there than there is. Anyway, it was an exceptional winter and there's nothing I can do about it now. That's the strawberry beds both tidied up. I've got the shallots in over there. The Enviromesh is there, ready for brassicas, but not doing it yet. And then here I've done this path right to the top now. Most of the side paths are done. This is as far as I've got, and then it's just that path down by the ditch that I've got to do as and when we get some more chippings. But as we stand, I'm very happy with the way things are developing. Raw beans are looking very green. I expect the slugs will enjoy them tonight. Bees are loving the blueberry bushes at the moment. More onions. We do like our onions. And then the little seedling centre around here, ready for the glass to go down when I leave. So that's how it's looking. It's still very brown, but there are little tinges of green starting to appear. Well, I think that's it for another week. It's been an absolutely glorious day up here on the plot. The weather is stunning, and I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. I stuck the deck chair out the back here and nodded off for an hour. It's been lovely. I cannot even begin to say just how lucky I am to have an allotment. I mean, if I had a couple of acres garden, you know, I wouldn't have to leave the house, but I don't. I have a small semi-detached, so this is a real bolt hole for me. I've had a really good day. I've achieved a lot. The plot is looking good. I'm totally on top of it. I really enjoyed just sitting down and watching the sunrise this morning. It's hard to imagine how dark it was when I got here this morning. But the plot's quite, or the site is quite busy now. There's a few people up here. So yeah, I'm going to call it a day there. And it really is now sort of full on. It's spring. We might get a bit of rain tonight, which would be nice. I can't believe I'm saying that after 5 months of solid rain. But the ground is really baked dry. Amazing how quick the weather can turn. So yeah, a little bit of rain would be nice. And everything is now full on. Seedlings are going like an express train. Everything's ready now. I just need the seedlings, you know, the brassicas and so on. If I put them in too small, you know, the slugs are just sitting there waiting. And, you know, it'll annihilate them. So the ground is warm enough now, I think. It's just that the seedlings need to be, rather than the toddlers that they are, they need to be teenagers. So I need another couple of weeks, I think, at least, to get things big enough and strong enough that when I get them in the ground, they can withstand the onslaught of slugs that awaits them. So, really exciting time. Thoroughly enjoying being up here. And just for the few hours I'm here, I forget all the madness that's going on in the world. And that's what an allotment is for, isn't it? I don't think about work. I don't, you know, I'm absorbed by the small minutiae of what I'm doing. And it's lovely. So, I hope you're enjoying your allotment if you've got one. If not, get your name on a list. And all being well, I shall see you next week. So look after yourselves. Bye for now.